Recognize that we are holding this meeting on the traditional, territorial, and ancestral lands of the Ojibwe people from Garden River and Batchewana First Nations. To the Anishinaabe people, this sacred and spiritual place has been known since time immemorial as Bawatang. We wish to honor the original people on this part of Turtle Island as we recognize their homelands in the spirit of partnership and reconciliation. I'd also like to acknowledge that last week was Volunteer Week. So thank you to all of our volunteers on the line, our board members of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, and all those supporting the Algoma Vaccination Clinic. We will speak to that a little bit later, but you can also visit our website, the Chamber of Commerce website, to get more information on the Algoma Vaccination Clinic. So thank you to all of our volunteers. The Chamber of Commerce believes that there is great value in holding open discussions with our elected officials. This format allows us to cover issues of public interest, specific interest to the business community, and doing so in an informal manner. As a chamber, we also feel that it is important that we provide our members the opportunity to remain engaged with our elected officials. I want to thank a few special guests today from our Chamber of Commerce and past presidents. We have Don Mitchell, who is a past president. We have Jason Nacarado on the line, who's currently on our board of directors, Randy Shurin, as well, board of directors, Derek Jackson, who is also on the Chamber board of directors and our Strive chair, as well as myself and Michael Stone, who are serving as your president and vice president. And of course, our chamber staff, Bob Burns, Don Ferguson, and Rory. Today's fireside chat will be led again by Chamber President Michael Stone of TD Wealth Management. Please take it away, Mike.
All right, thank you very much. Glad to see everyone. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces out today. And I guess, without further ado, we'll get right into this. Maybe before we start, I'll just throw this out there. Ross, I wore a tie today because I know you're usually a pretty snappy dresser. I thought, I don't want to be too underdressed. So I threw the tie on. You're not wearing the tie. So now I look like a fool. I am sitting at home and I had no reason to put this tie on today, but it is for you. Okay. So I hope you appreciated it.
Well, thanks, Michael. You look great. I for quite some time now have been sporting the blazer and the open shirt without the tie, unless I'm at a Premier's podium in Toronto. But fortunately, I am at home, and tie was not required. But I could put one on if you like. I could be back in.
That's okay. Whatever's comfortable. I'll remember that for next time.
I'm wearing a blazer though. I hope that qualifies as being.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't throw the suit jacket on because that just would have been way over the top. So before we move on, let's start with the most important topic. How are you? How's the family? How are the kids? How are you guys surviving?
We are doing absolutely outstanding. My wife Heather is presently working out of town, and so while the kids have been obviously not able to be in school, like so many others out there, we do have 3 young children, as many of you know, an 8, a 7, and a 6-year-old. So we've been doing weekabouts. So I have the children this week, and they are very occupied in their schooling right now online. So they should not be bothering any one of us today in this conversation. But things are great. If you see me look to the left from time to time, or you hear a lot of banging while I'm speaking, I will apologize in advance. I have a home under construction right now. And so if you do hear that noise or you see me look around, today not being the first day that we didn't have rain this week, I am really enjoying the sight of production happening in front of me. So I'll pause there and get into the conversation at hand though, Michael, but we're staying safe. The family is great. The kids are great. We're really excited. My wife got transferred back to the Sault, so we're really happy to be getting everything going back at home here again, which is really exciting. So I won't, I'll be, it's a lot more calm, I can say. So that's been positive.
Excellent. Well, that's great to hear. It's always nice to hear that things are going well. And I think it also kind of brings everyone back to humanity as well. We're all in this together. We all have kids. We're all working from home. We're all doing the online learning. So it's interesting to say the least. All right, so let's jump right into it. I'll start off. So there's been several issues that have come up with Laurentian University entering CCAA. What will be the impact on Sault College and Algoma University, and what will the government do to ensure other institutions don't face this type of financial challenge in the future?
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the question. And you've probably heard me say or seen in the media responses about Laurentian. Generally speaking, obviously it is in a court process, and that is CCAA, and we are no strangers to that process here in Sault Ste. Marie, having seen Algoma Steel go through that in November of 2015, and it took almost 3 years before they got out of it. I don't envision that type of a time frame for Laurentian University, but the short response when it comes to that situation, as we all very well know, with the impact that we saw here in our community, we have to let that process unfold. We have to let the CCAA process conclude, and once it concludes, it will certainly be the best possible option for the financial health of Laurentian University. Notwithstanding any of the above conversation, though, as it relates to Laurentian University, should anybody in our community have any reservations, concerns whatsoever as it relates to Algoma University or Sault College, we have 46 now public institutions in the province of Ontario that are part of my sector in terms of universities and colleges. And I have been monitoring them all extremely closely throughout this entire period, especially since the pandemic began. And what I can tell you, and which is a matter of public record, is there's only one institution that's presently in CCAA, and that is Laurentian University. And what we do know is that that goes back for quite some time with respect to the types of struggles that they were having there. There's a lot of concerns that stem back as far as 14 or 15 years with respect to the management of that institution. And if I may say, when you look at the programs that were recently removed by Laurentian through the CCAA process, they had 59 programs removed. And even still today, Laurentian University offers the second highest number of programs in the entire country, second only to the University of Toronto. And that's an institution with 98,000 students versus Laurentian at 6,800 students. Our two post-secondary institutions, Algoma University and Sault College, have approximately, when you combine both of them, half the number of students. But I feel the program offerings are pretty commensurate with the number of students, and their financial health has been quite positive throughout this period, and they continue to deliver excellent programming for our community and for our region. And I have absolutely no concerns for Sault College or Algoma University whatsoever, whether because of or in any way related to the Laurentian situation. Thanks, Mike.
I'm muted. Thank you very much. I cannot wait until the day when we no longer have to say you're on mute. So you guys have developed a micro-credentialing program. What opportunity is there for private colleges and professional training firms to participate in these methods of education and training?
So tremendous, Michael. And specifically in terms of how that question was phrased, I want to delve into that. Private career colleges are part of our sector. They can deliver micro-credential programs as well. They can do so in conjunction with a post-secondary publicly funded institution, university or college, as can our Indigenous institutes. So if you think of Sault Ste. Marie in particular, you've got Algoma University, you've got Sault College, as well as Chinois Kinomagnik, SKG group, that is also able to deliver micro-credential programs. In addition to that, we've got any private career colleges in the area would also be able to do that in partnership with one of our publicly funded institutions. These programs are an incredible opportunity right now for our businesses to be able to secure staff. I've spoken to so many of you for so long, and so many of those conversations informed the policy on micro-credentials. This is something that we have been building at the Ministry of Colleges and Universities now for the better part of 2 years, approaching 18 months, essentially, since I became minister. This was a program that I immediately saw the benefit of. And if you don't mind, Michael, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here because there's something a little bit humorous about this to me.
Go ahead, we like humor.
The first time I heard about a micro-credential, I was meeting with all the college and university presidents. And when I came away from micro-credentials, the first time it was mentioned to me, I said, what's a micro-credential? And I probably said that about half a dozen times before it started to make sense. And I was chatting with a president. It was the president of Dr. Stephen Murphy at UOIT. And him and I were chatting, and he said, well, Minister, you got to understand, it's like this. You know, think about the days of old being passed us by, where you would work 40 years in a profession and retire with a gold watch. And I thought, that's a really good point. We don't live in that world anymore, do we? It's changed. People will change professions multiple times over the course of a career. And when we talk about automation and how our industry is moving towards automation, and there's so many jobs in automation, in fact, for every job that we lose to automation, we gain 4 jobs in the automation sector, in the tech sector, in the innovation sector. And we are a huge proponent of that here in Ontario. And I thought, you know, we've got to find a way to stop thinking of post-secondary studies. And I use this comment with our institutions all the time. You know, we can't be throwing our square pointy hat in the air and saying, goodbye, it's over, you're finished your studies. No, it needs to be see you later. We need to get back into this notion of lifelong learning. Students need to transition to lifelong learners. There's no reason why I, myself, or anyone else on this call could not go back to university or college to obtain a 12-week micro-credential program or other type of accreditation to help them improve in their path through employment. And when you think of a post-secondary institution and you think of what they can give us in terms of those skill sets, traditionally we look and we say, well, I want to take a 3 or a 4-year BA. And then I might go to postgraduate studies and I might be in school for another 3 or 4 years. And when we talk to our kids, we're often thinking about a 6 or a 7-year post-secondary journey that ends thereafter. But that's not the world we live in anymore, because our working world is ever changing. And we need to continue to stay advanced. We need to continue to innovate. We need to foster that continuous improvement type of environment. Enter micro-credentials. And when I say there was something funny about it, at Christmas, my father-in-law gave me a watch for Christmas, my mother and father-in-law, and they were being very, very awkward about this watch as we were opening Christmas gifts. And I thought it was because my brother-in-law didn't get a watch, so I assumed maybe like it might look like favoritism in the household, and so I thought I better just stay hush hush. But Heather gave me the watch yesterday again because it had sat in anyway. Long story short, I went to put the watch on, and she said, "You do realize why that watch was kind of special to my dad?" And I said, "No, I know. I just thought it was a watch they bought." It's his retirement from CRA. It's his 35-year gold watch. And I thought, you must be kidding me. So I'm wearing that watch now, and I wear it regularly. Just got it sized at Savoy's yesterday at my curbside services. And I'm really excited about it because we just launched the micro-credential program. And so that was that moment of levity. I'll steer back to the conversation here at hand, I promise, and not waste any more time. The micro-credentials programs, I believe, are going to be an excellent opportunity for employers out there, members of the chamber, so many of our employers across this province, whether you be public or private sector employers. You all told us a problem, and I've heard this now consistently for a very long time, and it's that you have a hard time finding staff. One of the most expensive costs of doing business is keeping and maintaining good staff. I hear that regularly from employers. And I hear often that you struggle to find people with the skills that you need coming out of university programs. In addition to that, you find that after you train them, you often lose them to other people. So you spend a ton of your time and you spend a ton of your money to train people. And what I have seen is so many people sort of throw their hands up in the air and just say, you know what, I've come to accept that there's a cost of doing business, and the cost for me to train, find, maintain good staff is X. It's a big number. I just have to figure out a way to move forward because I need staff and I can't possibly do anything else right now. So I'm just gonna have to do it my own way. And you've sort of almost accounted it as a loss that you have to somewhere else compensate for. So we developed this micro-credentials program, and I believe this is a really legitimate solution for all of those individuals out there struggling to find quality staff. If you know other people that are in a similar type of business as yourself, and you know you're looking for a similar type of staff, it takes about 12 people for an institution to put on a program that is profitable. So if we can come up with 12 people, and I'll use the example as a lawyer in the community, small business, I had a very, very, very small operation. I would need maybe 1 administrative staff, maybe 2 at best. But if I wanted to help find those staff, I could partner with 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 other lawyers. Say, let's take students who came out of the administrative program, administrative assistant program at Sault College, and give them a specialty for 12 weeks. We'll help create the curriculum with the staff over at Sault College. We'll tell them exactly what we want. We want our staff to be able to use PC Law because that's the accounting software that we have to use. We want them to be able to use this software because this is what we use in our environment. And now you go out and train those people in a program of less than 12 weeks. Well, here's the key to what we've created. First and foremost, it's now OSAP eligible. Programs such as this were usually really hard to afford. And if you didn't have the money to be able to pay for it, or your employer didn't pay for you to take the course, it was largely inaccessible by the average people out there. Now it's financial aid eligible. It's OSAP eligible for the first time ever in the entire country. So people will be able to access the program, step 1. Step 2, there's costs built into our challenge fund for micro-credentials to provide equipment. So let's say, for instance, from that example I provided of the law firms, we need PC Law. Well, anybody who's a lawyer that's on the call and knows when you buy the software for PC Law comes with a considerable price tag. Well, if you have to train people on that software, you got to pay for it. We have up to $100,000 for every individual micro-credential course offering for equipment. So maybe, for instance, I see we've got Tenaris and we've got Algoma Steel on the line. Maybe you want to say, well, yeah, but I want to train our people to work specifically on this particular type of equipment that we use in our facility. There's equipment costs built in. There's also a fund I've created and announced in the last budget through what's called Surf and Turf. This is a college equipment fund as well as a university equipment fund. $10 million per entity for equipment specific costs for micro-credential programs. And last but not least is the actual building of the program. If you're going to build 1 micro-credential program, so that's 1 program of under 12 weeks, we have funding there to support the development of the program of up to $50,000 per individual micro-credential, up to $300,000 for a suite of 5 micro-credentials. We have created the cost to build the course, the cost to equip the course, the cost to fund the students to take the course. And I made sure that we didn't stop there. In addition to that, we've also created the necessary infrastructure to be able to put it online so that if we're in a situation because of COVID where we have to continue to learn in a hybrid format, or if we want to support parents out there and people who are already in the working world, but guess what? How many of you out there would like an opportunity, or how many of your staff out there would like an opportunity to go back to school and increase their skills? But who's going to go take another 3 or 4 year BA while you have rent to pay or a mortgage to pay, kids to feed? You don't have the opportunity to take a 3 or 4 year BA, but you could take a 12-week micro-credential online on your own time, when and where you want. And we've built the virtual supports as part of our virtual learning strategy. And I have the supports through eCampus Ontario who are experts in the field of micro-credentials that will support you. So we have built every type of support there for employers to be able to find the staff they need. But if you feel that, and I would completely appreciate this, I've heard this from a number of employers, we understand there's a lot of government programs out there, but they're too difficult, it's too time consuming. I don't have time, I don't have the energy, I just need to worry about finding staff, so I'll continue to do it the way I do it. So be it. But if you want to try another option, I strongly encourage you to look at micro-credentials as an option. Please reach out to any of our post-secondary institutions. Please reach out to my office. And also, Kathy, I know you're on the line. If you could please post in the chat here the contact information that we've been releasing at our regional chamber meetings through Robert Luke's site at eCampus. If you could please post that to ensure that everybody has that here, because Dr. Robert Luke is very, very happy to help anybody who wants some assistance in how to develop the course. So I will wrap up now with this last statement, I promise. There's a challenge fund. The challenge fund is being used to help market the micro-credentials, if you will. So it's sort of putting the jumper cables on our micro-credentials program. I just announced it last Friday, and I've been chatting with chambers across the province this week in town halls to further the discussion. But ultimately, you have 3 chances to participate in a micro-credential. Number 1, you're going to create net new jobs. So if your place of business is going to hire new people, whether you're in partnership with other businesses and other post-secondary institutions or not, if it's a net new job, meaning you've given somebody a new skill and qualification, you're going to change their rate of pay, you're changing their duties, job duties, net new jobs. That's category number 1. Category number 2 is you're upskilling your existing workforce. So let's say, as an example, we were to look at an organization. I'm going to pick on Michael here, McQuaid, because I see you on the lawn and on the line, Mike. But no pressure at all. But if Algoma's deal was to create a micro credential and say, well, we got these 20 men and women here who we want to give them additional skills on how to do their job, but we're not changing their job duties. We're not going to change their rate of pay. Those are upskill. We're giving them more skills to work in the atmosphere that they're in. That's the second category. And the third and final category is very important to me. And it's very important for one fundamental reason, because I built this into the system exactly because of what we are dealing with in Sault Ste. Marie. I made this comment at a number of the announcements provincially. Every community across Ontario is struggling from a pandemic right now. And in a lot of communities, it's COVID-19. But in some communities, it's not necessarily COVID-19 that is the number one front and center issue. In some communities, ours, for instance, mental health and addictions has been a tremendous struggle for us in this community for a very long time. So as a small, simple example, we have a third category, which is a community impact or COVID-19 related community impact. I know, and so many of you have said this best to me, members of our chamber, small business owners, business operators across communities, across this province, they are the fabric of their community in so many ways and do so much to give back to their community. If there's any thought to perhaps look at something like development of a micro-credential in the area of mental health and addictions, a simple example could be a course that helps parents in how to deal with addictions in their household. Something that simple could help people and give them more tools in how to combat this issue. That is a simple option of a micro-credential that would meet category number 3 because it's addressing a local community need. And it's giving back to the community and helping the community in some way, shape, or form. So while it's not creating jobs, still tremendously important in our community development and something that we want to be able to offer to everybody across this province as a special third category to access micro-credentials. And to the winning institution, it's the post-secondary institution, that institution will win up to $1 million regionally. Those are 4 regional awards, North, GTA, and then East and West. So our local institutions, whether they partner or whether they do it individually, have the ability to win $1 million, which they'll be able to give back to their institutions and the students within them. And I promise, Michael, I am now done.
Oh, thank you very much. That's exciting. And I think you can definitely feel the passion behind the subject. And I think everyone's got a much more thorough understanding of the program now. So thank you very much. And maybe in a few months, we'll be able to link back up and get some progress reports as to what the uptake is on the program. And I guess until that time, you'll have that watch on your wrist to help remind you of your passion and to keep pushing on that program. So we'll move on here. As we move on, I'm just going to bring one quick thing to attention. Mr. Peace put on a tie for me, so I just want to shout out, looking good, sharp. I'm not sure I could pull off the orange, but you make it look great. But moving on, healthcare funding from the federal government is a critical issue for Ontario, but more so for Northern Ontario. What is the government doing to ensure funding is increased and targeted to Northern communities?
Well, thank you for the question. Certainly a tremendous challenge, more than ever today. And I've had This has been a really difficult, obviously, last 14 months for all of us. And when I look at our health human resources, that's an incredible challenge. And we really want to make a greater focus. We just announced yesterday, you'll notice, when it comes to health human resources, an announcement for the hiring of an additional 8,000 or the training of 8,000 additional PSWs across the province, in addition to the 8,000 that we spoke of only a month ago. When you factor in those costs, over $83 million in training for those two programs alone, and that's just to address our PSWs. Earlier in the year, we expanded our nursing programs to ensure that we have more nurses across the province, as we obviously are substantially in need there. When we look at our ICU capacity and all the struggles surrounding that, there's so much that we are trying to do on the health human resources side of things. You referenced healthcare in Northern Ontario, and I'd really be remiss linking sort of to some extent to the first question, but not so much. We look at Northern Ontario School of Medicine as one of the most critical services that we have in Northern Ontario when it comes to our health human resources. And to be able to look at that institution coming through legislatively over the near future to receive independence, that is going to be so outstandingly amazing. And I know that's not proper terminology, but I'm going to say it anyways. It's going to be outstanding. And it's going to be amazing for Northern Ontario, because we now will have a medical school in the north that will be nimble and able to address healthcare resources across the entire region. They will not be restricted by governance, duplicitous governance. I mean, imagine an institution that is required to go through the governance of two other institutions before they can get anything done. It doesn't really make for the best possible recipe. And certainly they have done an exceptional job, and the evolution of that institution into a university is the next step. And that's going to help us in Northern Ontario. And I think certainly within our own community here in Sault Ste. Marie. That's just on the health human resources capacity issue, Michael. And I referenced this before. I'm not going to ignore the second part of the question, or the main part, but I think it's important to reference this. And I'm going to even connect this to the last conversation I just ended on when I speak of mental health and addictions in our community. We all know how much of a challenge is that subject matter is. When I look at, recently we started the Hearts group, specific for a micro-credential that dealt with health human resources capacity. And I did that very exclusively because when I was chatting with health human resources providers in the community, they were telling me of this total lack of capacity. As a small example, there was at our own Canadian mental health facility in Sault Ste. Marie, there were 12 positions that they were unable to fill. Imagine that, 12 workers. They could not find the skill sets to find those workers. And a micro-credential could solve that problem. So from the perspective of when you reference the resources specifically, Michael, the answer I can give you is that by developing the virtual supports, we invested $50 million to build these programs for micro-credentials. The micro-credentials programs alone was another 60 million, 59.4 to be exact. There's well over 110 million right there, 110 million I'm referencing, that goes specifically to address health human resources capacity issues, for which, especially in Northern Ontario, we are really at a disadvantage. So developing capacity, we could build all the buildings. If we don't have people to work in them, what are we doing? So we have to develop the capacity while we also make the investments that have been lacking. And so we have now transitioning, Michael, to that more significant portion of your question. We have invested substantially in our hospitals, and we have been continually making those investments. You would have noticed specifically in Sault Ste. Marie announcements of $120,000 that went to a nurse practitioner, $155,000 for a nurse practitioner and mobile mental health services. You saw $120,000 investment into that mobile community bus. There were other funds that went into, for instance, a COVID bed, COVID-19 specifically related bed at the hospital. In the year prior to that, you saw when we had the flu season and the surge in the flu season, we were able to increase our beds by another 16 beds, which was, I believe, $2.32 million that was invested into Sioux Area Hospital. Specifically, these were additional operating funds that the sector had seen a freeze for 8 consecutive years. So to be able to see those increases in operating funding, and we have done a number of those to the tune of just shy of about $3 million to this point, at the hospital. Those are tremendous advantages to increasing our health sector and increasing our human resources within the sector. And I think as we move forward, one of the really important pieces moving forward is really working with the federal government on our most recent announcements of additional sick pay for workers. And I think that'll be tremendous, but I trust that'll probably come up in a separate question, perhaps, Michael. So maybe I won't jump into that just yet. And I'll,
you know what, it actually isn't,
that.
because that was kind of hot off the press. So feel free to elaborate.
Sure, I will. So for all of you, and I trust many of you employers have addressed this issue. You'll remember that under the Canadian Recovery Sickness Benefit that was announced in the budget, the federal budget, I guess, last week, there was $500 for sick pay for workers. We've committed to the federal government to increase that, match that funding, and double it, provide the funding to double that to $1,000 a week. We're waiting from the feds for a response. It sounds positive, but we are waiting for the federal government to provide that response. And I think that will be a real benefit in terms of the increased enhanced sick pay. I think that will be a real benefit for employees and employers. And another thing that was just announced today, it was introduced in the House. It would have been, I guess, approximately an hour or so ago that this should have been tabled. And that's that we are going to expand 3 further days benefits, sick pay benefits for individuals who have to miss work to get a COVID test or while they await the results of their COVID test. So if they're missing work as a result of that, that was one area where people did not receive pay. Now we have tabled that legislation today, and that would provide everyone $200. Every employer would receive $200 to provide to their employees as additional pay for those 3 days, up to 3 days that they would miss work for a COVID test or while awaiting the results for a COVID test. In addition to, of course, that $500 extra per week matching funds for the sick pay benefits. But again, we are waiting for a response, but so far sounds positive.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next question is on childcare. So childcare is a provincial jurisdiction, and we know that this support is essential to getting women back into the workforce. But what position will the province take in securing federal funding and implementation? And how will this be balanced off against the lack of responding to the province's request for increased healthcare funding?
Well, we have committed to increase childcare funding. You'll recall the childcare tax credit benefit. We've indicated that we would provide $1,500 for that, and that was creation of an additional 30,000 spaces, childcare spaces across the province. It's been a challenge trying to. We're happy to work with the federal government, and we will continue working with the federal government and trying to collaborate together on trying to increase the contribution from the federal government. I believe their contribution is only at 2.5% at this time, and we're really hopeful that we can look to the federal government to increase that contribution. But certainly, childcare has been a tremendous challenge. We all know that. In fact, just the way we started the conversation, Michael, children are at home right now. And this is a really tough spot for a lot of parents who still do need to be able to return to their work environments if they're not at home. And when they are at home, trust me, I get it. I was presenting in committee this morning at 8 a.m. while I was racing my children over to my mom's to be able to set them up for on-learning. So we are all in the situation. I fully understand where we're all at. So it is a challenge. I mean, we really have to, one of the biggest sources of collaboration, though, when we're speaking about this in the context of COVID-19, especially right now, we have to get these vaccines under control, and we really need a greater supply of vaccines. And if we can't get, I don't want to, and I'm sure Michael will be speaking about this a little bit more in depth here. So maybe we might be transitioning to another question now or not, I'm not sure. But when we look at our vaccine supply issue, I've been struggling with this mightily. When you look at all the countries of the world that are fighting this pandemic, and we are all fighting it together, but here in Canada, I was maybe I'll use a little bit, I'll go off track here for a bit. I was watching Hockey Night in Canada last Saturday night, and on the hockey hot stove, Ron McLean and the group, and they were chatting about how even NHL players can't get a vaccine in this country, and how they're going to be forced to perhaps have to play the playoffs in the United States because they'll have to go there to get a vaccine. We don't have a supply of vaccines here. And if we can't get a steady supply of vaccines, it's just going to make the health conditions and all of these other elements harder for us to get to. So we're really working on that issue. And it's been a really difficult situation. I've heard from so many people out there when we talk about the vaccine rollout. But for all of you, again, this is we're speaking to the crowd of supply chain understanding very, very well, I would say. And when you think of your supply chain, imagine trying to get products out, trying to roll out delivery of an item when you have no idea when your products are coming in. You have no idea what your supply chain looks like. You have no reliability in your supply chain. How can you possibly get that? I mean, I perhaps if we want to go in a little bit more detail, Michael, I'm happy to do so, but I've probably gone a little bit.
If you feel like there's some important things that you want to discuss, I'm happy to talk about it. I mean, this is definitely something that's on people's minds and affects our ability to open. And, these are all, key business individuals. So, this is obviously something that's front and center.
And I think it's important to know, Michael, I don't want to blame the federal government. I don't want to play the partisan game. That's not what this is about. I know they're trying. I know they are working hard to try to get vaccines for us. But if you look at just the facts, Ontario is the leading province in the entire country in our vaccine rollout. We are over 30% of the entire population vaccinated. But we just don't know when vaccines are coming, and it's such a struggle. I'll give you some examples here. We received a shipment of Moderna the week of March 22nd. A lot of people had heard about that, but we only received 30% of what we were told we were going to receive. So imagine you're expecting a shipment, and you start to plan for your distribution of that shipment, but only 30% arrives, and it arrives several weeks late. So we were expecting, as an example, exactly 225,600 doses of Moderna and received 30%. We were expecting 500 doses of Moderna for April 19th. That was delayed, and it was also reduced in half. We're only now told we're going to get 235,000 of those dosage. AstraZeneca, which is a big one because of the pharmacy rollout, we're supposed to get 389,000 by mid-April. Now we're told it's going to be the end of May, and it's also been reduced to 194,000 doses. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Again, I know that the federal government is trying. I'm not suggesting that they're not. I hope there's some clarity out there. If we don't have a reliable supply of vaccines, for anybody in the supply chain, if you don't have a supply chain, how can you possibly distribute in the most reliable way? So we're doing the absolute best we can with what we're receiving, and by and large Ontario is a leader. I could tell you that the District of Algoma is right up there with the other jurisdictions and ridings across the province in terms of where we fall. I think we're doing relatively well. But I bring this all up for one principal reason. I don't think we've come to this realization yet, and maybe it's lost in the lingo of COVID-19, which there's so much COVID fatigue going on. But in Ontario and Canada, we're fighting 3 pandemics right now. We're not fighting one, we're fighting 3. You have the first wave of COVID-19, which has largely been addressed through a vaccine, but because of the lack of supply, we haven't been able to tackle that first wave. The second pandemic and the third pandemic are the new variants. And 100% of the variants are coming from outside of our borders. So if we really, these variants aren't swimming to Canada all by themselves, right? We have to get control of non-essential travel on our borders, and we need a more reliable supply of vaccines. And then hopefully we can really make a meaningful impact here. But it's been a struggle. And I know I've kind of gone off at maybe too many 7-8 hour cabinet meetings on a daily basis addressing this, but you can imagine the frustration of sitting in a meeting and the news changes as the meeting is going on. It's been a real difficult, challenging period, but I think we're doing well under the circumstances. So
yeah, stop. Absolutely. And this is something that, I mean, the Chamber is extremely, well aware of. As you probably know, the Chamber started the Algoma Vaccination Support Council and has brought together key health figures and businesses around Algoma, and, essentially trying to make sure that we do the best with what we've got, and, trying to support, vaccination take up around the community. I think the Chamber's done a phenomenal job and really stepped up to bat here for the city. But it's difficult when, again, like you said, you don't know what vaccines are going to be running or what clinics are being running on which days. And I think the Chamber, I'll give them a bit of a shout out here, and the volunteers that have been organizing transportation and food that have kept all these frontline volunteers and workers, fed and happy and healthy. It's been huge, but like I agree, it's been difficult. Maybe let's move on from that, and we'll hit on another big key topic for our area. So as you know, it's the first day not raining. It's warming up a little bit, so we are heading into the so very important tourism season. And operators of resorts, campgrounds, hotels, motels, and various suppliers, understandably, are pretty nervous right now. What can we expect from the province in terms of support for this hugely important sector for us?
This is a really tough one, and certainly for a community like ours that relies so heavily on that sector as well, and so many of our small businesses do. It's a very trying time. I think a lot of it connects to the earlier statement that was made. I think once we can really get a handle on that first wave through the vaccine rollout, that'll help tremendously. The issue of non-essential travel restrictions, though, that obviously doesn't help the tourism sector. We're talking about $36 billion industry. It'll definitely be the hardest industry, and has been the hardest industry hit as a result of the pandemic, and likely, I think in fairness, will be one of the longest ones that will sort of the longest recovery periods, I should say. I know Minister MacLeod has been working really hard through a number of community town halls throughout the province, trying to gather information. She's been a real advocate in the sector and has been successful at securing a number of funding opportunities. And I'm going to just try to pull up, because I don't want to mistake the number here. There is funding that is being set aside. So once we can reduce and relax those conditions, the stay-at-home order, as an example, the most principal one, clearly while we're under a stay-at-home order, kind of difficult to focus on on that tourism support side. But as we come out of those pieces, those types of restrictions, there is a number of funding opportunities that exist for the tourism sector specifically, to be able to really kickstart that sector again. And just trying to pull that number for you here. Forgive me, but I seem to be losing it offhand. So I'm not going to try to pull the exact number. When you look at a number of the small business supports, I think a lot of our small businesses in the tourism sector can avail themselves. You'll know that obviously we had the first round of the small business supports where a number of people were able to secure somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. We've increased that in the second round up to $40,000. So those supports for tourism organizations that were unable to obviously carry on the same level of businesses because they were in a shutdown, those supports will be very helpful. There are a number of support mechanisms that are under the tourism sectors. For instance, the Ontario Tourism and Hospitality Small Business Grant was the one I just referenced. We have in the 2020 budget, there was another $150 million. That was the number I was referencing earlier, 150 million that will be available in the tourism sector once public health experts have advised that it would be safe for travel to be opened again. We have the supports through the regional tourism organizations of an additional $15 million to regional tourism organizations, 1.3 million in financial relief for the resource-based tourism industry was accomplished through some waiving of Crown licenses, Crown land use fees. I think by and large, Michael, when we look at the sector, there are a number of supports for our businesses that will exist as we come out. But I think the real emphasis here is we have to come out of a lot of these travel restrictions and obviously the stay-at-home order. And as we get to a position where we're in a better position to sort of live with COVID and be able to open appropriately in that recovery coming out of it, I know that there will be a lot of supports for the sector, but we are still in a stay-at-home order. And right now, the message I really need to carry more than any, and we all do, is we need to really respect the stay-at-home order right now. I know the challenging position this puts on so many of our businesses, especially in the tourism sector. And for all of us in that area, when you live in the middle of the Great Lakes and you have such a beautiful surrounding and you want to be able to enjoy it in every way you can, we are fighting 3 pandemics, everyone. And we learned in the province and just here in Ontario in the region of Peel, a 13-year-old child died. That's a kid. When the pandemic first started and people would say to me, yeah, but there might be people dying, but they're in a certain age group. And to me, that was always just a completely irresponsible thing to ever rely on or say. But the reality is these new variants, the Brazilian variant is affecting young people. We have to find a way to protect our safety first right now. We will be there to support our businesses and our tourism sector once we are not focused immediately on just making sure that everyone is able to at least get out safely. And that's a real tremendous concern today. So I really hope that everybody can understand in the tourism sector that we will be there for you, but we have to protect our health and safety right now. It's one is one too many. One loss is one too many.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And obviously we can appreciate the question and the importance of that, and definitely get where you're coming from in your response. And hopefully once we get some better news on the vaccine COVID front and we start to reopen, maybe we'll be able to get some more information as to what programs specifically would be coming out to help those industries. So moving on to another subject that is front and center for our community is property tax. So property tax reform is extremely important to our membership and our city in terms of competitiveness. The government committed to property tax reform and modernization. What is the status on that?
Well, certainly we are still committed to that, definitely, and it's a very, very important piece. Obviously, as so many of you know, property taxes are a municipal issue. We have been working with the municipality locally here and provided, as a province, tremendous funding, I think, to municipalities. And you can look no further, just look at some of the announcements locally. For instance, we had, and I'm only going from memory, but you look at all of the road construction dollars, we've been able to advance $3 million for 2 consecutive years, which was able to get our Black Road expansion done, and as well as the Trunk Road resurfacing. We had for the last 2 years substantial increases to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. That fund, if memory serves me correctly, from the days when we entered into government, it was around 12 or 13 million a year. It went up by over $1 million and I think 1.3 million in the second year, or the first year, and then an additional 1.1 in the second year. It's now close to 16 million a year. Those are all funds that can be used to reduce, of course, tax burdens in the community. When you look at other funding, there was $5.4 million in the first round of the Safe Restart program that went to the municipalities. There has been a substantial amount of additional resources, I would say, that's been provided to the community through the municipality that is, and that is a good opportunity for the municipality to be able to use those funds how they see fit. But of course, everybody is well aware that it is up to the municipality to ensure that what the tax rates are and how tax rates are determined, and we'll continue to provide supports to municipalities, but ultimately how they spend those dollars, that is their call, and that is a conversation that really has to be had with mayor and council. But we definitely are committed to continuing to work with municipalities, continuing to look at ways to secure additional funding for our municipalities, and really try to ensure that we're giving them the flexibility and the tools that they're going to need to be able to really address not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but obviously all the other essential services that they have to provide through communities. And I think I can probably pause there, Michael.
No, perfect. Thank you.
You're moving around on my screen. I lost you. Sorry.
Yeah. If I start talking, maybe I'll pop back to the top line. How are you doing for time? I know this was scheduled 11:30 to 12:30. I know we're coming up to 12:30, so I want to be respectful of your time.
Someone will, I'm sure, holler at me and tell me I have to leave. I've had my phone buzzing off the hook here from Heather, but she's used to waiting for me to get through a meeting. So,
well, I'm not gonna broach that subject. I'll just leave that landmine alone. Maybe we'll do one more question here, and then we'll try and wrap things up because I know you've got family, you've got other commitments. So, Made in Ontario is a program that will have significant impact on our recovery. What is the government's position when it comes to infrastructure projects for the province? And will things like local steel be used for provincial infrastructure projects? Just as an example.
That is something that, I mean, specifically on that last piece, you'll remember when our government announced the funding in our first year for subways. And I remember sitting in cabinet in caucus that day when it came up and thinking, well, this is a great news announcement for Sault Ste. Marie. We're the only producer of plate in the entire country. Obviously, this is going to be exceptional for the Soo if there's a Buy Canadian or a Made Ontario type of policy. And what we saw through COVID-19 was an even greater emphasis on local and Made in Ontario products. So I can't commit to you right now, obviously, Michael, as to exactly how infrastructure projects specifically would be dealt with in terms of where those products can be sourced from and whatnot. But certainly the overarching goal is a Made in Ontario plan. I could tell you, maybe I'll swing this right back to sort of a starting point in the conversation. That's a driving that's sort of the driving force behind most of the policies that we are always pushing. And so when I looked at micro-credentials, specifically as an example, that was a Made in Ontario type of plan. And a lot of the sourcing of what was secured through that to provide services like eCampus Ontario, again, there were services outside of the province, but we ensured that we were using Ontario-based products. And quite frankly, some of those like eCampus have now been completely replicated by other provinces. And I know so many of you on this line have spoken to me in the past and saying, well, why is BC always seem to be ahead of the game, and Quebec always seems to be ahead of the game, and why was Ontario falling behind? Well, we had eCampus Ontario and the micro-credentials program, and as another program on the innovation sector, part of my portfolio, all of our intellectual property and the innovation piece is under my ministry. And we've developed another Made in Ontario plan that you'll be hearing more about on that front. But I've kind of gone on a little bit of a tangent here, Michael, and I'm going to try to bring the boat back home and just to say, Made in Ontario is definitely the strategy that we have on a going forward basis. That is the principal goal that we have, and we try to utilize that in all of our policies moving forward. We've done that at my ministry in just about every, looking at it from just about every lens, and that is the goal on a go forward basis. So the short answer to you and everybody is that is sort of a mantra and a policy framework, but then of course you have to work within the details thereafter, and everything has to go by a certain course of action. As you know, I know Mike got really excited when I referenced clearly the steel project, but when you think about it from a very practical level, if there's infrastructure that is going to happen like that, clearly we're the only steel manufacturer that makes plate. So that would be a pretty logical connection, but it not always would be, perhaps. So it's got to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. But the principal goal is always to focus on our own province. And you know, the policy that I use when I look at our research sector as a specific example, and I have said this a number of times, and it's never again will Ontario be not able to reap the benefits of our own taxpayer-funded research and innovations in this province. And that's a statement that you've heard the Premier say, never again are we going to be relying on other manufacturers of PPE, or never again are we going to be always looking to the outside. And when we look at the supply issue of the vaccine, that's a perfect example. Within my sector, the research innovation sector, there was a time over 30 years ago that Ontario had manufacturing of pharmaceuticals happening. And when we look at our sector in terms of the skill that we have in Ontario worldwide, which people often don't realize, the MNRA methodologies of vaccination distribution that the entire world uses was developed in Ontario. Right? Our research sector is one of the best in the world, but we haven't had a made in Ontario lens. And that is something that we are moving forward with in a very, very positive way. And it's really cross ministry, cross government is the goal.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And if I could just maybe throw in one other quick question. There was something came up in the chat box, and I know this is important in our community, so I'll read it out to you. But it has to do again with addiction. I know we touched a bit on it, but I think it's worthwhile to just, if you have a couple minutes, just to talk a little more. So it says, Ross, would you agree that the well-being of our city is not just dependent on its economic well-being, but also on the health and well-being of all its citizens? What are you and our government doing to deal with our epidemic of addiction and overdoses in our community? What is our government doing now, today, to help the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie?
Thanks for the question, Marnie. And this has been an issue that has been front and center for a very, very long time. And the work has been going around the clock on this. And so specifically, it started with the advocacy under what was originally this level 3 facility, and everybody heard that terminology. And then you've heard that terminology no longer exists. It doesn't. The model has changed. We have learned a lot more, and now the policy, the proposal from the Sault Area Hospital will accommodate everything that was in that old package, that level 3 treatment facility idea, but it's now referenced differently. It's called the Residential Withdrawal Management Services. The ask is before the Ministry of Health. In fact, actually, right before I signed on to this call, I had a long conversation with Minister Tabolo about the status of the proposal. I had a long meeting on Monday with Minister Elliott about the proposal. You'll recognize that there's that one proposal which is specifically to address sort of the immediate need from a mental health addictions perspective, and that is dealing with, again, the reference is no longer what it used to be. Now it's residential withdrawal management. It is residential services. It is the historical term of treatment is incorporated into that. We are trying to secure that proposal. Right now, I can tell you that they reached the point of examining a number of different sites in the city. All of the sites have been reviewed. The Ministry of Health has landed on one specific location that would work, but there is a conversation between the operating and the capital branches of the Ministry of Health, and I'm working with those two branches to secure both the operating funding and the capital funding that will be needed to be able to get this facility. While saying that, we must understand that all those services are presently occurring and happening through the hospital. The beds are still there, but they are at the emergency room. But I believe and will be continuing to advocate for a standalone separate facility that would be a residential withdrawal management facility. This is something that I will not stop until we find a way to get it done. And it's not done yet. And we are going to keep on working until we get there. We will find a way to secure this facility as a bare minimum. There is more. In addition to that, I wasn't satisfied, and I referenced this earlier today. One of the most important notations I learned, or the biggest pieces of information that came to me while there was the advocacy originally for this level 3. And I remember having a meeting with Sault Area Hospital and several thereafter, and it came to the point where he said, well, if we had this funding for this facility today and we were to build it right now, the information I have, and it's been confirmed through numerous sources, is we don't have the staff to work there. So we're not going to build something that we don't have the health human resources capacity to deal with. So while we were working on securing the funding for that piece, we have also started the Hearts group, which the Hearts group, if you'll recall, I announced when we made some mental health funding of the community mobile services, as well as the nurse practitioner services. I announced approximately 8 weeks ago or thereabouts. When I made that announcement, we introduced the Hearts group. The Hearts group was a very specific working group of service providers in the city who provide the health human resources for these types of initiatives. So specifically, the Canadian Mental Health, Annette Katajimaki, for instance, from Canadian Mental Health, is on the Hearts group. She was able to uncover that they have 12 positions right now that they can't fill because they don't have people for them. So the Hearts group's mandate is to try to look at opportunities in the research sector of my ministry, which I'll get to in a moment. And at the first point is to look at the micro-credentials options in my ministry. And so I know that Algoma University and Sault College are working with all those community service providers right now, and they are working towards developing the types of courses that will ensure that we have the health human resources capacity to be able to address mental health and addictions in our community. And I will not stop there because this is such an important issue. We will not rest until we have done everything in our power. I believe wholeheartedly in the plan that has been advanced, and I will continue to advocate for a plan that will see a mental health and addictions research and training institute for our province, for our region, where I believe we have a Sault Ste. Marie made solution to an Ontario problem. And it's not Ontario's problem, quite frankly, it's a national crisis. We saw that in the documentary Steel Town Down. I'm not happy with how they portrayed our community, but ultimately at the end of the day, this is a national crisis. And I believe we have a Sault Ste. Marie solution to a national crisis. And we are going forward with everything we will need to do to be able to make a great proposal there. And when we announced that Hearts working group, Ozma, the president of Algoma University, announced at that time that that working group that had already been developed months before between Algoma University, Sault College, SKG, Sault Area Hospital, and the Northern Ontario School of Medicine was continuing forward with a $100,000 feasibility study on what that can look like for our community, specifically a mental health and addictions research and training institute. And I can tell you that in this province and in this country, and quite frankly, in this entire continent, the issue of mental health and addictions does not receive a great deal of research intensive attention. And that is something that I believe we need to focus more on. And I believe that we can do that through a number of the supports within my ministry, working collectively with the Ministry of Health and the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. There is no immediate answer, but I will not stop advocating until we have done something meaningful to attack this problem. And I fully appreciate and respect the concerns that have been raised by so many for so long. This has been such a difficult challenge. It's affected me and my own family on a personal level. We're not going to stop until we found an answer, period.
No, appreciate that, Ross. And you can feel the passion and genuineness behind that, and with a lot of discussions we've had today. It wasn't a problem that started overnight. It's not a problem that's going to go away overnight. It's going to be a multi-pronged answer that's going to have to happen. But I think, working towards that type of facility is definitely a huge step in the right direction. I'll end things there on a question standpoint. Ross, I'll throw it back to you if there's anything you want to add on anything as a closing remark, or if you've said everything you got to say, then that's cool too.
Well, I will just say a few passing words here. I'm not sure if we're going to be looking at a relatively nice weekend or not. I haven't checked the weather, but I'm going to repeat the same comment again. Please, everyone, respect the stay-at-home order, and please stay safe, follow the rules. I don't need to repeat what they are. We are fighting 3 pandemics, and these variants of concern that have made our way into our borders are scary. And we need to take it seriously. I appreciate how tough it is to close your doors. I appreciate how hard it is to get 3 kids ready to go to school in the morning while you also have to work from home yourself. We have to find a way to stay the course, and we have been diligent. We have been strong here in Sault Ste. Marie and Algoma, and we've done well. But just look around us. 3 hours up the highway in Sudbury, look at the numbers there. A matter of not that long ago, look, we were seeing so much of the variants even hitting in Thunder Bay. It's all around us. And we have seen that it's spread from city centers out. So most of the time, the smallest of communities are the last to be impacted. We have to stay the course if we want to be able to stay in the position we have been, which is a relatively positive one under the circumstances from a health and safety perspective. So we want to be able to stay the course, and so we have to follow the rules. The last thing I really want to say is, and Michael, you hit the nail on the head when you said it earlier, there's a great deal of passion and excitement in me around the micro-credentials program. I really, truly believe this is a solution for all of our employers out there. I believe this is a tremendous opportunity to be able to find people. I think it is a talent pipeline. I think it is going to be an outstanding way to be able to secure staff. And if you're an employer and you're thinking about how do I find staff, I would just say to you, I don't think there's much to lose. You just need to pick up the phone, have a chat with myself, Mr. Luke at eCampus, our post-secondary institutions, and think about how you might be able to put your heads together to develop some curriculum. And we have a sector that is fully poised, ready, and able, and experienced at training. Let's let them do what they do best and let you do what you do best. We just need you to give them the tools as to what it is you need your staff to be trained to do. There's a great opportunity under the Challenge Fund. I'm not going to say that I don't want one of our local schools to be able to win the Challenge Fund, but obviously I will maintain objectivity throughout the process clearly, but I'm really, really hopeful to see a lot of action in Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm going to conclude with this last point, not about micro-credentials, but approximately 2 weeks ago, you would have received in your mailbox, or about 3 weeks ago, a magnet from me, a letter with a campaign that unfortunately, from a timing perspective, we ended up right in the middle of this next lockdown that we ended up in, an emergency order because of what happened with COVID. However, I really hope you do appreciate the spirit of that campaign. I really, truly believe that when we talk to the young people in our community, I know for a fact they all want to stay in Sault Ste. Marie. You all know how much the Home to Stay initiative meant to me, means to me, and continues to mean to me. The I Heart Sault Ste. Marie campaign is just a really, really simple philosophy. The more we talk about our city in a positive way, the more people get excited to hear about it in a positive way. And we have so many positive things to really herald and champion and be excited about in Sault Ste. Marie. Let's just talk really positively about our city and enjoy all of the great things that we have. And if you can visit the i-heart-ssm.ca website and include some positive comments, that would be so encouraging and so helpful. This is what we want to demonstrate to all of our young people. This is the best place in the world to be. You all know it. We all know it. Let's talk about why more. It's a great initiative, and I just really, really want to focus the positivity of our city and what it means to be from the Soo. Best place in the world. Let's sing it from the mountaintops.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's all for me, Michael.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass things back to Trish here, and she'll just conclude the afternoon for us. Thanks again, Ross.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and taking over an hour to listen to me today.
Thank you, everyone. As we wrap up today, I just want to take a moment to thank you all, as always, for all your support and engagement in our fireside chats. Without you, your engagement and your comments are always so beneficial. So thank you very much. If you're not a member of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce, I encourage you to consider joining. We are the most trusted organization to represent your business, get you the information, keep you connected with our elected leaders, government officials, business leaders, and most of all, connecting all of us together on a regular basis. And finally, to Ross, thank you so much for taking part in today's discussion with all the changes and challenges that our businesses face. Having you on the line is definitely time well spent and an opportunity to gain some insight into the decision-making processes and the considerations taken by your ministry. So thank you very much. Just a couple of reminders before we sign off. On May the 6th, coming up very shortly, we'll be welcoming Susan Gong, founder and managing partner of LTech Global Capital, Inc., for a discussion on Canadian immigration policies and work visas, how COVID-19 is impacting international recruitment, and tips on how to recruit foreign talent. As well, on May 17th, we'll be hosting an introductory session on the WSIB's Health and Safety Excellence Program. This is a new program being launched by WSIB, and the successful completion means saving money and receiving rebates on your premiums. So that's exciting. And finally, on June the 1st, we are very excited to welcome one of Canada's leading voices on innovation and economic disruption, John Stackhouse, who is a senior vice president in the office of the CEO at RBC, leading the organization's research and thought leadership team. So those are all available. All those links are available on the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce website. Registrations are now open for all three events. They will all be excellent. And thank you again, all of you. And please, to Ross's comment, please stay safe. And this will conclude our fireside chat today.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Everybody.